the DCEP is the digital currency electronic payment. As I said before, that's the current working name of the so-called digital yuan, the Chinese central banks, the People's Bank of China's currency that they're planning to launch any day now, as far as they're saying. All throughout 2020, due to Corona and more need to go cashless, they've been hinting that they are ready. And everyone is just waiting for the other shoe to drop and for them to say, this is starting. As I say here, one regulation away. So that's the main digital currency in China, because they have banned other exchanges, and so people cannot trade in other currencies. This is going to be the main thing that one of the most populous countries in the world adapts. Main thing about it is it's central bank backed. Unlike Bitcoin, unlike Ethereum, there is a large, very well established central bank standing behind this currency. I will remind you, if you do not know, Chinese bank reserves, central bank reserves, are larger than the central bank reserves in most of the other countries combined. I saw a graphic, but it was a bit of a time ago, maybe 2 years ago, which said that, you know, Chinese central banks' currency reserves just dwarf all others. US, Australia, Thailand, Vietnam, all the APEC countries combined do not have as much money in their central banks as the People's Bank of China has to regulate their currency. So this is a very serious central bank standing behind a digital currency. So this is why it's so exciting to so many people. Another thing that they offer is its offline availability. To do any kind of currency transfer, digital currency transfer, you usually have to be connected online, which makes it not so suitable for rural areas, and which makes it not so suitable for airplanes or some kind of situations where internet may not be reliable. So to overcome that, this currency actually works offline. You can do these trades between your phones, and then when you come back into the internet zone, it just sends out confirmations of what has happened. So that is another pretty cool feature that other digital currencies might not have. However, it is not a distributed ledger. All the cryptocurrencies that are distributed ledgers, they keep all their information in different places. And so they are impossible to meddle with, or highly, highly unlikely to meddle with. You would have to manage to change the information on a majority of them at the same time in order to change the consensus. And so at the same time, that also enables privacy. No one can really peek into all the transactions that have happened because no one has all the information. It is all distributed. This currency is not distributed. DCEP is not a distributed currency. It is very much centralized. All the information would be in People's Bank of China's hands. And this currency, as I said, is already in trial use. Between bank transfers are already been tested on this digital yuan, and there have even been some screenshots of people being able to try out using this digital yuan. It's a QR code. It has a little sign like a 1 yuan note, and you can transfer money to others, you can pay, all the typical stuff. So it's already being beta tested. Now, what are the advantages of this currency? Let's start with the good stuff. Central bank backed makes it stable, right? With Bitcoin, we have seen spikes and, you know, hills and valleys too deep for normal people to use it as a currency. No one feels really confident going into trading cryptocurrencies right now. Whatever they may tell you, it's always a risk. So that is no way to run money, to run a currency. As we learned in the beginning, money has to be stable. If it's not very stable, then it doesn't fulfill the functions of money. It becomes a very poor way to save value for the future, and it becomes a poor standard of deferred payments. If I tell you I'll pay you 5 bitcoins next year, you don't know what that means. Can those 5 Bitcoins afford you a car, or can they afford you bubblegum? There is no promise to what the value of Bitcoin will be next year. With DCEP, that is not the case. This is central bank-backed currency. Yuan has been stable for many years now with very slight movements. So you can really comfortably use it, knowing that there is a big, strong government behind it. Next, there is low entry for account opening. This is something that is called the bottom of the pyramid. If you imagine wealth on a pyramid with the richest people on the top and the poorest people on the bottom, it's usually shaped like a pyramid because there's the most people at the bottom, right, in most countries. And kind of accessing that is really hard. In China, about 40% of the population is rural. I also said that in the other presentation if you already watched it. If you didn't, go and watch it. And of that 40%, they live in villages which usually do, but not always, have some kind of internet access. Even if they have internet access, there may not be banks, and those banks may have too high criteria for opening an account. You cannot allow someone to show up with 10 USD and say, open an account, right? The bank would not consider it profitable. But the government can, because it's a digital currency, so the fees of maintenance are negligible. And so you are suddenly able to tell to people, hey, listen, you have 50 cents, put it in my bank. And that's a reasonable approach. You will get more people to come to you, and you can still make money even off of the 50-cent customer. That is really powerful. China will be able to finally bring all those people from rural areas into the fold, bring them into this banking system that they have. They'll be able to lend, they'll be able to borrow, and suddenly a world of opportunity opens to them. We've seen microfinancing work really well in some countries, especially for like microloans to help people start some small enterprises. But all those things are much easier when those people have a bank account, right? If the government can look at your bank account and say, okay, this is how much money you have, here is, $100 stipend, try to open a business. And that is a really powerful tool that China will probably leverage to get the last of its people out of the poverty. Although China has done already a fantastic job pulling its people out of poverty in the last 50 years, they can now reach that last section of the population that they haven't been able to reach yet and bring them into the fold. So this offline availability and low entry for account opening together mean that suddenly this large percentage of people who are in rural areas have access to banking. Next, it boasts anti-laundering, anti-terrorism safeguards built in. And what that means is, because the central bank can see who is sending money to whom, they can see any suspicious activity. They can use big data analytics, AI, and what have you, to kind of figure out what is maybe suspicious movement of money. And they can immediately, if someone is found out to have some terrorist ties, look at who has sent money to this person. Who did this person send money to? And when the currency is completely digital, that is possible. If he had cash, it would be almost impossible to track the movement of money. And finally, low transaction fees. This currency is boasting that it'll be even cheaper than WeChat or Alipay, because WeChat and Alipay are parts of for-profit businesses, and DCEP simply is not. DCEP is completely government-owned. They do not need profit to survive, so they can make their transaction fees zero if they want to motivate their people to share money among each other. Right? So this is a really powerful tool. The government can make sure that everyone can transfer money cheaply to each other or to their favorite shops. So what are some of the disadvantages? The issues are, well, China's central bank backing need not mean stability. It should. It's a big bank. It's very stable. But not everyone believes it, right? Some people say, well, I'm maybe American. I'm not, but if I were, I could say maybe the Chinese bank decides to, change the way that they're doing business and suddenly drop the value of the digital yuan. And not all people would trust a central bank, right? And for a good reason. Sometimes government central banks have their policies such as keeping the price low, or inflation low, or unemployment low, or exchange rate stable. And that is not necessarily what the people want, or a certain person might want. These things can kind of shake the belief into this digital currency and make people not apply it as much as they otherwise would. The second and really big thing is privacy concerns. Because central bank can see how the money moves in order to stop terrorism and money laundering, it also means that people will not have privacy. If they would usually use cash to buy some guilty pleasures of theirs, legal but guilty pleasures, now they cannot do that in anonymity anymore, right? They have to make all of their transactions public to the government's eye. Chinese government says, of course, they will not use this to spy on their people, and they don't have a reason to, but you don't know what some government of the future might do with this technology. And so people are kind of skeptical. And finally, one of the reasons why China is moving to this digital thing and why this whole digital currency space race is happening is because every government wants their currency to be the worldwide standard, right? To say, this is the new gold, right? Everything is compared to the value of my currency. But for that to be happening, this currency has to have international legitimacy. And DCEP does have some issues which make it unlikely for other countries to adopt it as a reserve currency in their central banks, for example. One worry is political, right? The political landscape changes every day, and you don't know in 10 years who is your friend, who is your foe. So countries may be varied. They may say, well, I don't know if I trust this to be the currency that I choose. Second is economic. Some countries which trade with China may be motivated to adopt the yuan because they use it often, but countries which do not do so much trade, perhaps they're far away, they will not be as motivated to do this. Secondly, each country enjoys sovereignty of its own currency, and so they do not want to give up that independence in order to adapt, for example, a Chinese digital coin. That same argument has been raised, of course, of the euro, for example, which is a currency used by many countries, and in case of Greece, using another country's or a group of countries' currency has done them harm. They were not free to do what they wanted. So there are economic reasons to stick to your guns and only use your currency. And the third is a technical reason. While Bitcoin and Ethereum kind of have publicly shown algorithms of how they work, there is currently no idea if DCEP will actually be publicly available into how the code works. And that makes other countries and people from other countries kind of skeptical. If I don't know what's in it, I'm not comfortable doing it, right? So that's one thing, like maybe there is some kind of secrecy which people are not comfortable with. Secondly, it's a question of whether the way that Chinese do their digital currency will be the same way as other countries do their digital currency. What that can cause is some kind of a mismatch in technologies. Maybe to use Chinese digital currency, I would need infrastructure, which I do not have, and thus I cannot use the Chinese digital currency, right? So a lot depends on how it is technically done, and we do not have enough details yet. It depends on the political climate and, of course, on the economical incentives. I think China will do its best to play the economical card, asking for a lot of trade to be done in the digital currency, for example, to push for its widespread use, and that's fair. US has done that with the dollar, Europe is doing that with the euro, so that is a perfectly legitimate move, but I'm not sure if it'll be enough to really push China into one of the reserve currencies of the world that it wants to become. So finally, we talk about conclusions. The future of digital currencies globally has some issues. First thing that I wrote here, and really, if you only remember one thing, you can remember this: cash is king. Not only because it's much more ubiquitous in use and used everywhere and really generally acceptable, like we said, money must be, it also gives consumers sovereignty. Sovereignty means independence and the ability to rule over yourself. Many people are skeptical of digital currencies, and perhaps for a good reason. They are afraid of something called negative interest rates. You may wonder, how does that work? Interest rate can only go as low as 0. At negative interest rate, basically when you put money in a bank, you have to pay them to keep your money there. No one is going to do this. But if there is no cash, if all money is digital, then you cannot pull your money out of the bank. It is always in an account. And that worries people. If you were to really have a country with fully digital currencies, the central bank would have incredible power that it didn't have so far, which is to push the interest rates into the negative and basically take money from people's accounts. This is already kind of done whenever central bank prints money, because by printing money, it gives money to itself, but it devalues the value of all the other money in circulation. So for example, if I have $1,000 in my pocket and the central bank prints some money, it causes inflation and the value of the money in my pocket shrinks. But that has kind of been an indirect way of taxing people, but we would still kind of see, okay, you know, they printed that much money, inflation was this much, you know, it's really not so direct. When they say interest rate is negative 2%, it means money in your pocket is losing 2% each year. That's so powerful. And we don't know what psychological effect that may have on consumers yet, right? They may decide to spend quite quickly, pushing inflation quite high, but sometimes maybe taking the country out of a recession. Maybe it's a tool for good, but we have never tried. And what is unknown is dangerous. So cash is king. So long as you have cash, you are sovereign. You are independent. Government cannot take money easily from your pocket. If you have it, it's yours. So remember this. With digital currencies, it need not be like that. Second, quantum computers. Quantum computers are now becoming more and more of a reality as barriers are taken down literally each week at this point. In delivering quantum computers on some feasible scale, we may soon reach a point where data is not safe anymore. Your passwords aren't safe against a computer that can do billions of calculations per minute and really quickly crack your password. And if it cracks your password, it cracked into your wallet. That cannot happen with cash. Once again, cash is king. Digital money is vulnerable. Then humans are fallible, right? You forgot your password, it's gone. That is the current situation with almost any online wallet. It's very secure because you must have the password. If you forget it, you can't access it again. And I read somewhere exactly how much Bitcoin was locked in accounts that no one has access to, and it's huge. So if I had a quantum computer, first thing I would do is I would offer it as a service. I unlock your account for 20% of what's in it. You know, otherwise you couldn't access it anyway. And that would be really good business because quite a lot of money is stuck in that way. And so this human fallibility means that then people will do all sorts of things. They will maybe write down a password, but then that makes it less safe. A hacker, if you wrote it down on your phone, could read it. If you wrote it down on a piece of paper, a thief could see it, or maybe a colleague or someone close to you could then see that piece of paper. So now you have all sorts of problems that cash need not have, right? So human fallibility causes most issues in the world, and this is one other place where it does so. Governments are even more fallible, right? Years change, decades pass, and you can't tell what the governments of the future will be like. Future is a foreign land, and future government is a foreign government. People who will vote for them, you don't know those people. They're the young people now growing up. You have no idea what it'll be like. And so it's reasonable to assume that if central banks are given more time, eventually a corrupt central bank governor may come and use it and abuse the system. So this government fallibility is an even bigger problem, because if all money is digital, he has the power to start siphoning it off into friends of his cronies and into pockets of his friends and cronies. And that is a real problem. So those are the issues of digital currencies. But not all is gloomy. There are some advantages. Future is about speed. Everything is getting faster. Even if you're young, and I know most of you are much younger than me, you can see that, right? The time of your childhood, things went slow. Now innovations are getting faster and faster and faster. When you want to pay something online, you don't want to sit there, type in your credit card, type in your number, type in the password, confirm it on your phone. You want to click and forget about it. You want it to arrive next minute if possible, right? Everything is about speed. And in speed, there is money saving. And as you will see in the other presentation, if you haven't seen, speed is money. And so we are moving towards trying to have faster and faster and faster transactions. In the times of your grandparents, a transaction would sometimes take weeks to clear. They would write a piece of paper, send it to the bank. The bank would then write to another bank. Then that bank checks with the other account and says, okay. Then they write back, they confirm with you, you say okay, then they give the money. It takes forever. It's called float. And float time is that time between when you said you will pay and when the payment actually goes through. And that used to be days, right? Now it's seconds, and that is really incredible. And that is making business much easier and much faster to do. So in a way, future makes digital currencies kind of inevitable. We will want that power of a digital currency, that speed that it gives. So it's just a question of what form it'll be in. Second, as I said, government monetary policy is quite stronger when the currency is digital. They have a lot more power how to play with it. They'll have a lot more data about how much money people have, how do they spend it, what do they do with it, and then motivating them to spend more, spend less, save more, save less becomes a much easier pursuit because you know the behavior of the people. So the monetary policy will become much stronger with a currency that is digital than it is right now. And these last two, interestingly enough, are the same as the issues before. The advantages, humans are fallible. And when it comes to these digital currencies, you could paternally take care of people, making sure that, you know, their passwords are safe with the government, for example. So that kind of loss of account cannot happen if it's a government-controlled currency. So you can kind of save humans from their fallibility a little bit if the currencies are digital. You could motivate them to save for retirement easier, or you could make it mandatory that they save for retirement, making sure that everyone has enough money to take care of themselves when they're old. And governments are even more fallible. And actually these digital currencies, if they are done right, can keep the governments in check. If they are done in a transparent way, in a way which makes it public, what is being done with the currency and how, suddenly central banks will find themselves much more exposed to the critical eye of the public. That is not a bad thing, right? You could code into these digital currencies some sort of safeguards that stop the central bank from abusing it. So a really well-designed central currency that is online, that is digital, could actually help us prevent government abuse. So, let's come down to the conclusions. First thing, next 10 years will be crucial. Everyone in this field agrees. China is launching their currency, Facebook is thinking about launching Libra, negotiating with the US government. All the governments are kind of keen on it, waiting to see how the first player goes and then copy or upgrade. This is going to be tense 10 years if you are in currencies, especially digital currencies. Next, technology, regulation, and politics are the three things that you have to keep an eye out. Technology makes these digital currencies much more interesting. It allows them more innovation and different things that they can do. So it will make them more lucrative and a more interesting thing for governments to adapt and for people to start using. Regulation, on the other hand, is, the live or die of all these currencies. If the regulation on digital currencies becomes easier or at least more straightforward and decided, then private companies can kind of play in that area and innovate and create something that might become widespread. And finally, politics. Even if you create the most perfect digital currency and you launch it, if your country is not liked, it will not gain international reputation, right? If you launch it from North Korea, there will be a lot of tense politics about adopting it from all different sides, and you cannot help it. This issue, because it's so closely connected to monetary policy, which is one of the three fundamental policies a government has, it's really political. And depending on that is deciding whether it will succeed in becoming an international currency. The only certainty is uncertainty. Nothing is guaranteed in the digital currencies business right now. How it will develop in 10 years, anyone who tells you they know what's happening is lying. There are only maybes. And finally, do not gamble. If you are for a living working in cryptocurrencies, there is a small chance that you know what you're doing and you can profit off of them. Otherwise, it is same as going to a casino and playing on a roulette, except you don't even know your chances. Investing in currencies just as a side thing simply does not give you enough information. And people who do it for a living, who know much better and are much better informed with maybe insider information that you cannot even get, will always be one step ahead, taking your hard-earned money. So same advice goes for stocks and for cryptocurrencies. Do not gamble. That's all. Thank you very much. I was Dušan Nešić and happy to hear from you.